How did we get here? You can't answer that question without learning about D. Thorne Graham.
My father, D. Thorne Graham, was the first Black that was accepted to Duke University.
What he went through with police.
When I saw my father on crutches, bruised and beaten up, it was unbelievable. It was hurtful.
His fight with the Supreme Court.
He wanted to make it right.
And how his efforts to stop police brutality inadvertently resulted in better protection for law enforcement.
His case has set the standard, the unfortunate standard for so many cases today.
Today, as protesters march in cities across the country demanding police restraint, in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's even more personal.
Graham versus Connor was created here. Most people don't know that.
D. Thorne Graham's experience more than 3 decades ago changed policing as we know it, for better or worse.
My dad's legacy, what we want is to change it to something more positive.
November 12, 1984, Charlotte, North Carolina. Just 2 hours or so from the birthplace of then 11-year-old George Floyd, another Black man was about to experience something that would transform the way police could use force in the eyes of the law.
Graham is the seminal case that sets forth the standard.
That's Wake Forest University law professor Cami Chavis.
We call them the Graham factors.
On the afternoon of November 12th,
he went into a diabetic coma.
39-year-old D. Thorne Graham walked into a West Boulevard convenience store, hoping to buy orange juice to counter an insulin reaction. When he noticed the line inside was too long, he quickly exited as a nearby Black officer watched.
He was having a diabetic episode, and so there was some erratic behavior.
Backup officers arrived.
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare
They mistook him for being intoxicated.
And when Graham reached for his wallet to show his diabetic identification,
he was not armed. No reasonable belief even that he was armed.
Despite being unarmed and having committed no crime,
he is thrown on the car.
It escalated.
An officer told him to shut up and slammed his head. No less than 4 police officers grabbed Mr. Graham, one on each arm, one on each leg, picked him physically off the ground, carried him to a police car, opened the back door, and threw him in, to use the petitioner's words, like he was a sack of potatoes. They drove him home, never arrested him.
He ended up sustaining a broken foot and lots of other abrasions.
Graham's daughter, Deborah Ann Moore, was in high school at the time.
He sees a Black man that is stumbling around. His perception is his reality and his stereotypes. So my dad didn't have a fighting chance.
She describes her father as a family man, a transportation worker who dealt with racism all his life.
He sat me down and he told me as a little girl that one day that I would encounter racism, but I did not know it would be that soon. When I saw my father on crutches, bruised, that was really hard to see, to know that another person, especially a police officer that is here to serve and protect, actually did that to him.
Injured and convinced the police used excessive force, he sued the city of Charlotte.
It's the most important civil rights case I've ever pursued.
Fayetteville attorney Harold Beaver took up his case pro bono, arguing it before the United States Supreme Court.
We'll hear argument next to number 876571, D. Thorne Graham versus M.S. Connor.
Beaver said up until that point, a person had to show malicious intent to prove excessive force. But Graham changed that.
The Supreme Court decided for us 9-0. Very proud of that. It established for the first time a national standard for judging police misconduct.
The Supreme Court unanimously found reasonableness must be judged through the eyes of an officer at the scene, not in hindsight.
It considerably reduced the burden of proof that civil rights plaintiffs had to establish.
At the time, an improvement, but over time, the case evolved into added protection for police. And as technology advanced, police killings invited more public scrutiny, while officers based their deadly actions on a fear for their lives.
We've seen it time and time again where officers say that, and for the objective person out there who's not in that officer's shoes, say, how did you fear for your life? It doesn't make sense.
Former FBI agent and federal prosecutor M. Quentin Williams is the author of How Not to Get Killed by the Police.
Fear may be in the heart of somebody based on their experiences, And it might not be that reasonable.
Williams says the current standard leaves too much room for fear based on personal experience and says it's time for a change.
It lends a certain subjectivity to it, meaning it's not an objective standard. It's the eyes and the way the law enforcement officer felt at the time. It should be, would a reasonable officer be scared? If an officer says, I feared for my life, we have to examine, is that reasonable that they feared for their life? Not just that they felt that way, but is it reasonable?
Beaver thinks it's worth revisiting as well.
There's always room for growth and interpretation of the law.
As for Graham, he ultimately lost his lawsuit against the city of Charlotte and has since passed away.
It is used in virtually every training session that police have regarding excessive force.
But all these years later, his name is still cited in police training manuals, district attorney decisions, and court rulings.
The standard needs to change.
His daughter, now a nurse in Charlotte, along with her siblings, are now pushing for better protection for the public, considering multiple options, bothered that their father's name continues to be associated with protecting the police.
That has to change. That is not right. It was hurtful then, and it's hurtful now.
Moore says that's not what he wanted. That's not why he fought.
My brothers, my sisters, we want to fight, and we want others to join us to help set the standard straight.
And to think, it all started with an innocent trip to the store for orange juice. I'm Nate Morabito with WCNC Charlotte.